Welcome to Learners Academy. Today is the fifth and final chapter of quick revision for final exam series in the distinguish between question and answers. And here I'll be covering 8th, 9th and 10th chapter, that is lenses, metallurgy and space mission. And I'll be giving you the best notes for final exam, and I'll be covering all the distinguishes for the science 2 also in the coming days. And these all questions are from Maharashtra Board 10th standard. Stay focused throughout the session and let's get started now. The difference between metal and non-metals. Metals have luster, whereas non-metals, they do not have luster except for diamond and iodine. Okay, diamond is a allotrope of carbon. All right, now metals are generally good conductors of heat and electricity, whereas non-metals, they are bad conductors of heat and electricity except for graphite. And similarly, like a diamond, graphite is an allotrope of carbon. All right, now metals, they are generally solid at room temperature, but there are exceptions like mercury and gallium. Whereas non-metals, they are gases or liquid at room temperature except for bromine, which is a liquid. All right, now metals form basic or amphoteric oxide, whereas non-metals, they form acidic or neutral oxide. Okay, point to remember. Next point for metals is that metals such as sodium, potassium, calcium, aluminium, iron, they all displace hydrogen from water, whereas non-metal do not react with water at all. Now metals which are highly reactive, they displace hydrogen from the dilute acids, whereas non-metals, they do not displace hydrogen from dilute acids. Next point, metals have strong tendency to lose electrons, whereas non-metals, they have a strong tendency to accept electron. Now let me show you their position in the periodic table. Now this is the layout of the periodic table. Except for hydrogen, you can see that all the elements that are towards the left side of the periodic table, they are all metal. They are all in blue color, and this is the zigzag line. It is called zigzag line, and on either side of these we have this yellow colored elements. They are all metalloids. They are in between metals and non-metal. Their properties are in between, and all the elements towards the right side of the periodic table, you can see they are all non-metal. All right, in these non-metals you also have halogens, you also have noble gases in the last group, in the 18th group. All right, here only non-metal which is there towards the right side is hydrogen. All right, let us understand what is the difference between roasting and calcination. And before that I start this topic, let me tell you that in our reactivity series, in the middle of the reactivity series, we have certain elements like iron, zinc, lead, copper, and these are moderately reactive. On the upper side of the reactivity series, calcium, lithium, sodium, potassium, these are highly reactive. So what happens to the a moderately reactive series? They basically occur in the form of their sulfides and carbonate salts. All right, so when they occur in these forms, they have to be converted to oxide so that we can get obtain metal from them. It is easier to obtain metal from their oxide rather than sulfide or carbonate. So for that, the sulfide ores are and carbonates ore are first converted into oxides. So there are two processes of converting. In case of sulfide ores, what do we do? The ore is heated strongly in the presence of air, and then that process is called roasting. And in case of carbonate ores, the ores are heated strongly in the limited supply of air, and carbon dioxide is given out in that process. So now let us start point-wise differentiation between roasting and calcination. In roasting, the ore is heated strongly in the presence of air, and in case of calcination, the ore is heated strongly in the limited supply of air. The reaction is for roasting is zinc sulfide plus oxygen will give us zinc oxide, and in this case sulfur dioxide will be released. And in case of calcination, since it is in limited supply of air, so will not be adding oxygen, it will be heated and will get zinc oxide plus carbon dioxide. So in both these reactions, you can see that we get zinc oxide. Now the zinc oxide which is obtained this way, either by roasting or by calcination, is further reduced to zinc by using a suitable reductant such as carbon. Alright, so our basic intention is to get the element metal. Alright, so we'll be reducing it with the help of carbon. Now third point in roasting is that in this process sulfide ore is converted into metal oxide, whereas in calcination carbonate ore is converted into metal oxide. In case of roasting, fourth point, the sulfur dioxide gas is given out. In case of calcination, carbon dioxide gas is given out. In case of roasting, fifth and last point, the ores are heated in excess supply of air, whereas in calcination, ores are heated in limited supply of air. So that was all about roasting and calcination. Let us start with the difference between saturated hydrocarbon and unsaturated hydrocarbon. And before I start with the saturated and unsaturated hydrocarbon, let me tell you what is a hydrocarbon. The compound which contain carbon and hydrogen as the only two elements, they are called hydrocarbon. For example, I'll show you the first picture. You see here, there are how many elements are used? Only carbon and hydrogen, and how they are having only single covalent bond here. Alright, so that is why whenever they are having only single covalent bond, they are saturated hydrocarbon. You can see the next picture. This is electron dot structure, how the bond is formed by sharing only one electron of each carbon and hydrogen. Alright, hydrogen is having one electron in the outermost shell and carbon is having 4 electrons in the outermost shell, and that's why carbon needs 4 hydrogen to have 8 electrons in the outermost shell, and each hydrogen is having only one sharing with carbon and its valency is satisfied. Now let's go to the unsaturated hydrocarbon. Here you will see that the number of hydrogen atom gets reduced, and the carbon atom, in order to satisfy the valency, it will share 2 electrons with the other carbon atom. That means there will be a double bond, double covalent bond, or in case the hydrogen atom they reduce further in number, so it will undergo triple covalent bond in order to satisfy the valency. So it will form either alkene or alkyne. Alkene means there is a double bond in the carbon hydrocarbon, and alkyne means there is a triple bond between the carbon atoms in order to satisfy the valency. Now we'll go with the point-wise differentiation between saturated hydrocarbon and unsaturated. The first point, as I told you, here the carbon atoms are linked to each other only by a single covalent bond. In unsaturated hydrocarbon, the valencies of carbon atom are not satisfied with single bond, so they contain double or triple bond. Saturated hydrocarbons are chemically less reactive. The unsaturated hydrocarbons are chemically more reactive. Saturated hydrocarbon do not decolorize bromine or iodine solution, whereas unsaturated hydrocarbon they decolorizes the bromine or iodine solution. The next point is that on burning saturated hydrocarbon, we get a clear blue flame, while on for burning unsaturated hydrocarbon, we get a yellow flame with lot of smoke. In case of saturated hydrocarbon, substitution reaction is a characteristic property. A substitution reaction will take place. That means since there are a lot of hydrogen satisfying the outermost octet of carbon, so hydrogen will be replaced, it will be substituted by something else, whereas in case of unsaturated hydrocarbon, there will be addition of some other element uh, in case of unsaturated hydrocarbon. So addition reaction is a characteristic property of unsaturated hydrocarbons. The journal formula for saturated hydrocarbon is CnH2n plus 2. Here N represents the number of carbon atom. Just in case you have one carbon, so when you replace, you will get CH4 as the answer, that is methane. And in case of unsaturated hydrocarbon, the journal formulas are, in case of alkene, CnH2n, further reducing the number of hydrogen atom, CnH2n minus 2 will give us alkyne. That is the journal formula for alkyne. Alright, and the N is the number of carbon atom. So that was all about saturated and unsaturated hydrocarbon. Let us understand the difference between open chain hydrocarbon and closed chain hydrocarbons. Before I start, let me show you the pictures. This one is open chain hydrocarbon. It can be branched or it can be unbranched also, and they are flat structures and they are chain of hydrocarbons. All right, whereas let me show the other picture, closed chain hydrocarbon, they are cyclic. They are also flat, but they are cyclic structures. They are in ring form. All right, and they also can have double bond in between them. That's not a problem. Even in open chain you can have double bond or a single bond. So the basic difference between open chain and hydrocarbon and closed chain hydrocarbon is that in open chain carbon atom is not cyclic. In closed chain carbon atoms are present in a cyclic form or a ring form. All aliphatic hydrocarbon contains open chain. What is aliphatic? Means chain or flat structure. All right, and aromatic hydrocarbon contains closed chain. Aromatic means a flat or cyclic structure. In case of hydrocarbon, they're called aromatic structures. All right, so that was the difference between open chain hydrocarbon and closed chain hydrocarbon. Now you can see this picture. I have taken this from the textbook. So you can see that single chain hydrocarbon and branch chain hydrocarbon, they both come under open chain hydrocarbon, whereas cyclic hydrocarbon, you can see cyclohexane, which has got single bond, now cyclohexene, which has got a double bond, so all, and benzene also, so they come in a category of closed chain hydrocarbon. All right. Let's see what's the difference between alkanes and alkenes. Similarly, we can also find what is the difference between alkane and alkynes, only you will have to change few points. Now the first alkanes, let's see the picture first. See, here you can see that there is single carbon covalent bond between carbon and hydrogen, whereas in case of let me show you the second picture, there is a double bond between two carbons. All right, and in case of alkynes, what will you have? There will be a triple bond. All right, so you can make your own difference in case they ask you alkynes. Now the second point of difference, first point of difference is alkanes, in which carbon atoms are linked to each other only by a single bond. Alkenes, in which carbon atoms are linked to each other by double bond. Now what happens in case of alkynes? So you'll write hydrocarbon in which carbon atoms are linked to each other by a triple bond. That's it. Now in case of alkenes, they are chemically less reactive. Now alkenes, they are chemically more reactive. Even alkynes, they are chemically more reactive. Alright. Now alkanes, they are called saturated hydrocarbons. Alkenes, they are called unsaturated hydrocarbons. Even in case of alkynes, they are unsaturated hydrocarbons. Alright. So now the last point is the journal formula for an alkane is CnH2n plus 2, whereas CnH2n is the journal formula for alkene. Now I want to ask you, what is the journal formula for alkynes? It will be CnH2n minus 2. Alright. And the structure for alkyne will be C2H2. Alright. So that was all for alkenes, alkynes and alkanes. What is the difference between covalent bond and an ionic bond? Before I start, I want to show you a picture. See, this is hydrogen atom, and there is a sharing of electron. The outermost electron, hydrogen has got one extra electron in the outermost shell, and it will share with one more hydrogen atom with the similar electron in the outermost shell, and together they will have the octet complete, and there will be a single bond because there is a sharing of one electron each hydrogen is sharing one electron with the other one. All right, so this is a single hydrogen bond. Now let me show you the second picture. Here you can see that there are two oxygen atoms, and you know that oxygen atom has 6 electron in the outermost shell. It has got how much, what is the atomic number of oxygen? It is 8. So innermost shell has 2, the outermost has got 6 electron. So how many it needs? It needs 2 electron. So it will, the other oxygen atom will also need 2. So there will be sharing between the 2 electrons. Here you can see 2 oxygens have come together and they are sharing these 2 electrons, and then because there are 2 electrons involved in sharing, so there is a double bond. Now for triple bond, nitrogen, let's take an example of nitrogen. Nitrogen has 5 electron in the outermost shell. That means it needs 3 more. So there will be sharing of 3 electrons from another nitrogen atom. This nitrogen atom will share its 3 electron with this, and this will share its 3 electron with this. So there is a triple bond. 3 electrons are involved in the sharing. So this is called a triple nitrogen bond. So these types of bonds, they are called covalent bond when there is a sharing of electron. Now let me tell you what is an ionic bond. You see this picture now. Sodium atom has got 1 electron in the outermost shell, and the chlorine atom has 7 electron in the outermost shell. So what does it do? Sodium atom will give away its 1 electron. It will become electropositive. Chlorine atom, when it receives 1 electron, it will become electronegative. Now there is an attraction between electropositive and electronegative atom. So there will be a strong ionic bond formed between these two atoms, chlorine and sodium. Alright, so this is the basic difference. There is not sharing, there is a give and take. Alright, now let us understand point-wise difference between covalent bond and an ionic bond. Covalent bond have weak force of attraction between molecules, whereas ionic bond have very strong force of attraction between the ions because they are electropositive and electronegative ions. Alright, covalent bond do not form ions, whereas ionic bond, they form ions. They have low melting point. In case of covalent bond, the melting point is very low, and the ionic bond, all those molecules which have got ionic bond, they have very high melting point and very high boiling point also. Now, in case of covalent bond, they are poor conductors of electricity. Alright, in case of covalent bond, they are poor conductors of electricity, whereas in case of ionic bond, they are very, very good conductor of electricity in the molten state and in aqueous solution also. The last point. Covalent bond, they are readily soluble in solvents like kerosene and petrol, and they are insoluble in water, whereas Ionic bonds are readily soluble in water and they are insoluble in solvents like kerosene or petrol. So that was all the difference between covalent bond and an ionic bond. The difference between high Earth orbits and low Earth orbits. Let me show you the picture. So now you can see Earth and there are different orbits around the sun on where these orbits are for the satellites to move. You can see which is very near to the Earth, that is called low Earth orbit, and the other one is medium Earth orbits. Alright, medium Earth orbits are also called geostationary satellite orbit above the equator. See, the one which is moving around the equator will be able to take the pictures of equator, but they are not useful in the study of polar region. For polar region study, we need elliptical medium Earth orbit passing over the polar region. You can see this one which is elliptical and it passes over the polar regions. All right, and these orbits are called polar orbit. The other one is called geostationary orbit, medium Earth orbit, which is around the equator. Now, but here we have to find out the difference between high Earth orbits and low Earth orbits. The medium Earth orbit which I was talking about, that is between them HEO and LEO, and the distance is also in between, that is between 2000 kilometer to 35,780 kilometers. So now let us start with high Earth orbits and low Earth orbits. Height from the Earth's surface for these high Earth orbit is greater than 35,780 kilometers. These orbits are above this distance, alright, above this height. Now the height for low Earth orbit is between 180 kilometers and 2000 kilometers, alright. And what did I tell you? In between there is medium Earth orbit, that means from 2000 to 35,780. All right, now that was extra point. Now we have to concentrate on, focus on HEO and LEO. So second point for HEO is satellite revolving in these orbits take just 24 hours to complete one revolution around the sun. So it's exactly the same time as the Earth takes for one rotation around itself. All right, satellite revolving in the LEO, low Earth orbits, take around 90 minutes to complete one revolution around the Earth. All right, because they are very close to Earth, isn't it? Now the third point for HEO is the satellite appears stationary with respect to Earth, because it's the same time, 24 hours for Earth's rotation and 24 hours for them to complete one rotation, so they appear stationary. Whereas low Earth orbits, they do not appear stationary because they take only 90 minutes to complete one revolution around the sun. All right, now in case of HEO, example is geostationary satellite revolving parallel to the equator. All right, they all revolve around these orbit in HEO, high Earth orbits. Now example of low Earth orbits are International Space Stations and Hubble telescope, which are revolving in these orbits. All right, so this was all the difference between LEO and HEO. I hope you enjoyed watching the video and learned how to distinguish between two phenomena. And with this, I finish my first Science 1 notes. And tomorrow onwards, I'll be starting with my Science 2 distinguish between quick series. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see more of such videos, and also share with your friends widely. Keep learning and press the bell icon. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful day.